Welcome to Alaska's news source, Seeking Shelter, Seeking Solutions Special. Mayor Dave Bronson says he has asked about the topic of homelessness more than any other, and the Anchorage Assembly spends hours and hours debating that issue. Yet the crisis seems to grow worse daily. The investigative team at Alaska's news source traveled to Houston, Texas, and also looked at homeless responses across the nation to see what Anchorage might learn when it comes to seeking solutions to the problem. Investigative reporter Mike Mason has our story.
It was a struggle, but I never gave up hope.
John Nichols is a military vet who spent 10 years of his life on the hot streets of Houston.
In my situation, I'm a widow and I had lost my wife. And I went into a depression, deep depression. This is my wife that's deceased.
Nichols spent most of those years living in an abandoned house. His struggles took a toll.
Alcohol and marijuana, pills. Amen.
But Nichols got assistance through the community's program to help homeless people transition from the streets to permanent housing.
The services are out there if you want them.
For the past 7 years, Nichols has been living at this apartment in Northwest Houston.
It's a blessing.
It's not congregate housing where homeless people are grouped together. It's an apartment where he feels at home.
I have a roof over my head. As you all can see, it's a nice apartment.
Go see your critter.
Tammy Dempsey also found permanent housing through Houston's coalition. She's been in her apartment just outside Houston in Conroe for the past 5 years. Before that, she spent a year and a half in the woods, camped out in a tent.
I don't think I'd be alive if I didn't get into a place. The streets were not made for me.
Dempsey lives in a one-bedroom apartment with her dog, Rosie.
I feel blessed.
Like Nichols, her rent is paid and she's now on disability.
Yeah.
The city's focus on permanent housing combined with supportive services help people apply, qualify, and keep housing.
Have a place to look and see my plants growing. I have Rosie here. Go and make dinner. Sit and go to sleep and not have to worry that somebody's going to come and hurt you.
So what can Anchorage learn from Houston about homelessness?
In Anchorage, officials recently announced that by next year, the city will have over 300 new apartments ready for people to move in. But unlike Houston's leaders, Mayor Dave Bronson says permanent housing should not be the city's job.
I think the taxpayers should only be involved in the sheltering process because it's a public safety issue. You know, if you freeze to death on the street, that's a public safety issue. A shelter keeps them from doing it. Now, all the hotel conversions and the housing, the nonprofits are taking care of that, and they should.
Houston's focus could not be more different.
And quite frankly, it's not going to all happen at one time.
Houston Mayor Sylvester Turner says his community's decision to pour public funds into permanent housing and empower one agency to oversee the effort has led to moving thousands of people off the streets and keep them in housing.
You have all of these nonprofit partners in this space, let's say about 100 of them, that are working in alignment under the umbrella of the Coalition for the Homeless, The Way Home. And the city of Houston is right there at the heart of it.
The conversation about the Golden Line is very welcome.
Anchorage Assembly Chair Christopher Constant wishes Mayor Bronson shared that vision.
I believe for every dollar we spend on shelter, we should spend $10 on housing. And that's the bottom line, because every dollar we spend on shelter is a missed opportunity to actually end the problem and not just perpetuate it forever.
So what's a better investment for those dollars?
Housing units.
The mayor says finishing the navigation center would reduce the growing number of people dying on the streets of Anchorage.
Because the shelter would avert all this. That's the reality. I know it's political, but so be it. I really don't care. So I'm just looking for solutions. Go ask the Assembly and go ask ACH.
What's it like to be on the streets in Anchorage?
Cold. And everybody's out to get you, basically. There's not very many people out there to help you.
Rocky Redding had been homeless in Anchorage for 8 years. He lives at the Aviator Hotel in Anchorage, but will soon be moving to the Golden Lion.
Hopefully in 2 weeks.
It's not what he considers permanent housing, but as he struggles to get sober, it's a place he can begin rebuilding his life.
Your goal is to get completely clean.
Yes, completely clean and completely with all my family.
Been clean and sober for over 3 years now.
Elizabeth Parrish was homeless in Anchor Point, then moved to Anchorage where she lived in shelters for years. She's an example of someone who got help finding permanent housing in Anchorage.
Yeah, I did.
She now holds down 2 jobs to make ends meet.
I work at Subway and I also babysit.
She lives in a studio apartment.
I'm so thankful.
It's temporarily subsidized by a nonprofit, but soon Parrish will begin paying her own rent.
I plan on staying there.
She's grateful for the help she received, but says Anchorage needs to do more for others.
Not enough consistency in the system that we live in that allows permanent housing situation, not just temporary, but permanent.
But city leaders in Anchorage are still disagreeing over the fundamental question of what kind of housing to provide.
I don't think we should be building homes for people. I think the nonprofits should be doing that.
That is manufacturing a fantasy.
Until there's a consensus, Parrish's call for a consistent policy remains just a hope. Meanwhile, in Houston, Mayor Turner offers a stern warning.
They have to align and not be competitive, because it takes all of us who are working in this space in order to be successful in housing a person or a family.
Coming up next on Seeking Shelter, Seeking Solutions, how did Houston get so many people in government, nonprofits, and the community to agree on a single focused plan to combat homelessness? We'll touch on that after the break. Welcome back to our special, Seeking Shelter, Seeking Solutions. More than 4,000 miles south of Anchorage, in what seems to be a city that is a polar opposite, only an hour drive away from the Gulf of Mexico, sits Houston, Texas. It's a city that seems to have accomplished the impossible. Government leaders, charitable groups, and the community have been working together in a 10-year effort to combat homelessness. Let's take a look at their success.
It's hot out here. It's like 100 and something.
In searing triple-digit heat, an outreach team from the Coalition for the Homeless in Houston embarks on an important mission.
So today, this whole week we're doing the 290 closure.
Workers are decommissioning homeless encampments along this stretch of the highway.
So he's in the next intersection. He usually stays right underneath the underpass.
That means they're clearing the homeless off the streets after weeks of working to place each individual into shelters.
We'll put that you have a dog.
The area they're targeting now includes 10 highway underpasses.
For your doggo, he has to go to the Humane Society first.
These are places where Houston has made it illegal for the homeless to camp since the city can offer them alternative shelters.
You want to do that?
The coalition has a system in place over the course of a week to prepare folks for the journey to a better place to live. One of the men found is Wendell Hall. He's been on the streets for 2 years, often panhandling at this intersection.
You don't taking anything?
I ain't got them.
Okay.
When the team finds him, he's eager to leave.
Basically, you like a child because the people take care of you. I like my own money. I like my own place.
Hall's paperwork was already completed beforehand, so he's good to go.
So today he's going to the Navigation Center, and he'll be going there for maybe approximately a month or maybe less. As soon as his apartment's ready, he'll be enrolled into a housing program.
That means Hall can enter permanent housing.
So it's a very collaborative approach between the public sector, the private sector, nonprofits, all working together, moving in the same direction.
Houston Mayor Sylvester Turner has appointed a team of people to help combat the homeless situation.
And so you really have to look at it as this is a crisis of humanity, that in many cases where either we have failed them or we simply haven't provided the necessary resources to transition them. But this is a very solvable problem.
We are not a shelter-based system, we're a housing-based system.
Mark Eichenbaum is the mayor's senior advisor on homeless issues.
So we have over 100 different agencies all working together on one united plan with shared goals and shared strategies to ultimately move the needle on reducing homelessness.
Eichenbaum says Houston is unique because each agency works under one umbrella that's led by the Coalition for the Homeless. Each agency shares the same data and information about every homeless individual on the streets.
That coordinated access system is embedded at all of our shelters. It's embedded at our soup kitchens. It's embedded at our diversion facilities. Even our outreach teams have it on tablets, and they're out in the field assessing folks for housing through coordinated access.
When people say, how do you solve homelessness? The answer is housing. Housing, housing, housing.
Mike Nichols is the coalition's CEO. The group oversees programs not only in Houston, but 3 counties as well. He says since 2012, 28,000 people have been taken off the streets and placed into permanent housing.
A decision was made that we would house the most vulnerable people first, the most vulnerable people, people most likely to die on the street.
We've cut the number of individuals on our streets by more than 70%.
But housing the homeless takes housing. Houston officials say they not only have to build new units, but also find affordable rentals throughout the city, something that many other cities have found challenging.
Do they have available housing, not just affordable housing, but available housing? Or do they make the permitting so rigorous and so impossible that you can't build? Is it so expensive that you can't build?
Although Houston has received many accolades for its work, not every organization is singing its praises.
Here you go.
Because while their focus remains on housing the homeless,
you go ahead though.
There are many services that get overlooked, such as food.
And there is a huge disconnect between the mayor's office and the homeless community down here on the streets. It's been seen over and over again. So I'm happy to say that we've got quite a few homeless off the street, but 60%, there's just absolutely no way.
Wendell Hall is one of those people who is getting off the streets and now has a chance to rebuild his life.
I got to keep the faith. That's what I did. I never gave up on faith. I could have been worse off than that, But something told me just hold on, hang in there,
Okay, all right, bye. As long as he keeps doing his stuff, doesn't, break the lease or anything, he could have housing for as long as he needs it.
Still ahead on Seeking Shelter, Seeking Solutions, there are many options for temporary and permanent shelters for homeless people. But what works best? When we return, we'll take a look at the options. Anchorage and other cities across the country have experimented with a wide range of temporary and permanent housing plans to move the homeless off the streets and into homes. But which of these efforts has produced verifiable, long-term success? Investigative reporter Mike Mason takes a look.
Homeless people on the streets, sprawled out on sidewalks, camping in tents. These are just the ones we see. But a successful response to homelessness should also include those living in temporary shelters, as well as the ones struggling to remain in their homes. Anchorage officials still aren't coordinating or even sharing a unified vision on how best to solve these problems.
I don't want to be part of that.
The mayor argues that government should not be in the permanent housing business, while social service agencies say funding permanent housing is the government's job. Last summer, city officials transformed Centennial Campground into a massive shelter, but it was plagued with problems.
People experiencing homelessness need a shelter.
This year, the city considered purchasing small pallet homes that 1 or 2 people could occupy, as well as setting up sanctioned camps around the city. But so far, those plans have gone nowhere.
As a business person, I'm very frustrated.
Vince Beasley owns a music and dance school in South Anchorage, next door to one of those proposed sanctioned camps.
And I'd be concerned if there's this low barrier facility across the street for what kind of a neighborhood feel we're going to have.
The Anchorage response to homelessness clashes with what we found in Houston. There, government and private social service agencies work toward one single goal: finding permanent housing.
That is probably a flaw in our system, quite frankly, that housing is the solution to homelessness, that housing first is the response, and that we agree that coordinated leveraged funding from all sources goes towards that goal.
Meg Zolotel is the executive director of the Anchorage Coalition to End Homelessness.
If you don't set up shelter to be housing focused, you're not moving toward the solution. Hard stop.
Like Anchorage, Portland, Oregon has also struggled to focus their efforts. The city turned to Los Angeles for possible solutions. In LA, officials contract with Urban Alchemy, a group that manages several villages composed of tents and tiny homes.
As somebody who's benefiting from them, what would you say?
Reporter Adrian Thomas from our sister station KPTV in Portland traveled to LA to learn more about their program.
Carrie Bell is the site director for Urban Alchemy's Lincoln Safe Sleep Village in Los Angeles. She gave us a tour of the site, which is similar in size and structure to what will be in Southeast Portland. The majority of Urban Alchemy's staff are formerly incarcerated or have experienced homelessness. The group says this is a unique approach to providing homeless services, giving formerly incarcerated people a second chance at a career and creating more personable relationships with those living in the sites. Carrie Bell says this helps ease the tension with people fresh off the Los Angeles streets.
I was drug addicted. I was homeless, I was incarcerated. So when I have these conversations with our guests here, they understand I'm coming from where you're at.
But that program has also had its share of problems.
We can see the pods have been set up.
Jenna Watkins from our sister station in Portland covered that angle.
Neighbors we spoke with have mixed feelings.
On one hand, it's great to have the village set up and to move people into housing, but the city's just not engaged with neighbors at all on the process. There hasn't been a single olive branch, so I think that's been tough.
On its website, the city of Portland says, quote, "Our team has been working with the community since the announcement of this site as a safe rest village."
Has anyone with the city come and spoken to you about this? No.
Urban Alchemy contends its system works, claiming they don't even need security guards because the guests follow the rules. But their program is not a solution to permanent housing. Here in Anchorage, there has been some progress on that front, with more than 300 units available between now and next year. Like in Houston, people here are moving from the streets into long-term housing.
No more violence or tears.
Elizabeth Parrish spent years living in Anchorage shelters. She's now happy with her studio apartment, which is currently subsidized by a nonprofit.
It has a full-size kitchen and stove, refrigerator, and even a dishwasher.
And I think it all comes together if you give them in a normal environment.
In Houston, a growing number of landlords like Jamil Hassan work with the city's coalition,
where we have coalition
placing formerly homeless individuals into real apartments.
I have seen grown people cry and they will say, "Thank you, like I am doing something miracle. I'm renting them a place and getting paid for it." There is not a favor, they're not living for free, but they have been through so much.
Hassan now rents more than 40 of his apartment units to folks who were recently homeless.
I guess I just don't understand why we don't already, why we haven't already adopted Houston's model.
Good question. I don't know. That's where we want to go. We should be continually and aggressively focused on how do we move this individual to housing.
Let's go to his unit.
Houston's aggressive approach to finding private landlords willing to rent to homeless people may be the key to success. Hassan even works with tenants who have criminal backgrounds and bad credit. He feels by integrating them into a broader community now, they'll have a better chance of success in the future.
They do not, and I say that they do not want to live in a place where everybody is homeless. They want to live in a place where they are given the self level of recognition as a human being as others.
When we return on Seeking Shelter, Seeking Solutions, we talk about one of the biggest and least talked about challenges, how to keep homeless and housing insecure children in school. The last issue we are going to talk about in our Seeking Shelter, Seeking Solutions special is possibly one of the biggest and least talked about, the impacts of homelessness to children. Thousands of children in Anchorage and all over the country are considered housing insecure. They may live in shelters, cars, or even on the streets. But how do schools keep their kids in class where they have the opportunity to learn and grow if those students don't even have a fixed address?
Hang on 1 second, Jeff. Hang on. Whoa, hold on 1 second. Hang on, David. He's coming.
8 o'clock Tuesday morning.
Is it a house?
Elementary school starts in just an hour.
They're going to be super late for school.
Kim Pavey.
I mean, it takes 20 minutes.
Sends taxis across Anchorage so that dozens of children.
You got a booster seat, right?
Who have inconsistent homes can get a ride to school.
Take him to school? That's what you're going to do.
There are 70 trips today.
Thank you. Have a good day in school, guys. It is just a little crazy when it gets going.
It's hard to describe just how busy it is. The calls for rides keep coming.
That happened a lot.
The Anchorage School District pays for rides using $500,000 for taxis and gas cards to ensure that children in shelters, temporary homes, foster care, living in hotels, and sleeping outside have a way to get to school.
We always say 1 student, 1 school, 1 year.
ASD says while the students may have unstable lives and no permanent homes, they can still count on going to school.
You know, we do have the obligation to provide that service, and it's kind of the most cost-effective way to do it, even though some people are like, really?
David Mayo-Kiley leads the Child in Transition program for the district. That group provides services to students and their families that meet the federal government definition of homeless. It's the law that these children have the same access to educational opportunities as everyone else.
You must be literally homeless, so on the street, sleeping on a green belt, in a car, in a homeless shelter, those types of situations. Our definition is much broader. It also includes those, but also families that are doubled up or staying in motels if they've lost their housing and can't afford a place of their own. It also includes unaccompanied youth that fit the above definition as well.
Here in Anchorage last year, that was almost 2,000 students, but really, the number is probably higher.
Because we know we're missing kids. We know that there's families that for whatever reason don't call us. And it's, you know, I don't have an estimate for what that would be, but we try as best we can.
And it happens all over the country.
And there's some that are sitting behind a homeless shelter.
Liz Owens from our sister station, WRDW in Augusta, Georgia, found thousands of students just disappear from schools each year.
Near shelters and motels.
Why did he miss last week?
I had no way to take him.
Behind bars and an alphabet soup of data codes.
How would you describe the system right now?
We find the lost children of Richmond County.
Completely flawed. It's failing families that really need help.
The I-Team uncovered not dozens or hundreds, but thousands of them missing from school this year. Students like Gary, a second grader, who missed class for a month when he moved into a homeless shelter and didn't have a bus ride to school. Or this homeless teen who had to learn from home without a home to learn from. They are the invisible children behind the numbers.
I was basically shocked at the amount of children that are missing in the system.
Missing from this system, their schools, and people who care for them. To keep them from being missing in Anchorage, ASD works with local shelters. At this moment, 60 children in 16 families are at McKinnell House. 30 are at the women's shelter Clare House. Hundreds of young people who aren't with their parents stay at Covenant House. 898 last year alone.
Being a child of parents who were addicts at the time, we moved around a lot.
Denise Delgado, once a homeless child herself, now runs the Salvation Army's Social Services Division.
I went to 10 different schools by the time I graduated. Most of them was elementary and middle school. It was really moved around a lot. So that foundation of just moving on, and it's not moving away, it's literally in town, just another school.
Families staying with the Salvation Army are provided a range of services designed to help keep their kids in school, from nutrition and financial advice to practical daily needs.
It's assisting them with school supplies, new clothes. Nobody wants to go to school and have rags or dirty clothes or not having everything that you need.
ASD says it's critical that homeless students stay at one school consistently, and that's even harder to do when the parents aren't helping out.
Come on, folks, let's start getting to class.
Sometimes school resource officers try to find students who haven't been to school in a long time.
How you doing?
Or the district will call and text to get in touch with anyone.
We have had a number of families that have sort of been checked out kind of post-COVID, sort of lost touch with the school during the online portion, and we've done a lot of work over the years to try to reconnect with those families.
But it doesn't always happen.
The majority of them, they move around a lot, and so it's a challenge.
The often unseen challenge of children who may not have a consistent lifeline.
Okay, all right, I got you.
On the other end.
Oh, I think these kids are great. I mean, anything we can do to get them to school.
As government and community leaders in Anchorage continue to navigate ways to help get homeless people off the street and into a safe place, Alaska's News Source will be following the story every step of the way. To watch our investigative team's full Seeking Shelter, Seeking Solutions series, including the unedited version of the interview with Anchorage Mayor Dave Bronson, you can head to our website at alaskasnewssource.com.